and welcome to a new entry of the High Tech Low Code podcast. Today we're going to focus on how technology is disrupting retail. And to help us with that, we have the company of Neves and Mohammed Hashish. We'll go through the challenges and opportunities that technology provides and how it is shaping the process in retail. Tiago, thank you very much for joining us again in our podcast. How are you doing?
Yes, all good. Facing these challenges that we've all been living for more than a year now, but all good, and looking forward for today's episode. Very interesting topic, I would say.
Thank you. And we also have the pleasure of having Mohammed joining us to go a bit deeper into the topic. Mohammed, could you do a quick introduction about yourself so that our listeners could get to know you a bit better?
Thank you. I'm first timer in this great podcast, so thank you for having me. I've been in the software industry for around 20 years, and I was lucky enough to see a lot of customers' problems in retail, in different parts of the business, in other industries as well. Been part of this in delivery, in solutioning and finding the right solution for the problem, from sometimes product management perspective, from different angles. So I will try my best to give you what I know, or what I've seen at least other smart people do, because I hope I learned a lot from smart people that I've been working with. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you very much for sharing with us. And now I would like to start our discussion by asking, what is disruption in retail from your point of view? Where does the disruption start? What is the aim of it?
I think disruption in retail started long ago. If you look at 90s, where the product was the king, whoever had the best product used to sell most. So Toyota had the best reliable, cheap car. They sold the most. Whatever you do, Toyota is selling the most. And then that changed a little bit starting 2000, maybe 4 or 5, where the age, what they call the age of the customer, came in. And you find a brand, you start talking about feedback of users. And if they don't like something, they leave stars. And if you look at the stars and they're not enough for you, you don't buy. So the customer started actually driving the decision of buying rather than the quality of the product. And that keeps changing, and it will keep changing, starting from the biggest wholesalers to the smallest retailer in grocery shop on the corner.
I see. So kind of like the customer is always right, but taking to another level.
Yes, and that's very true. And with the increase of online shopping and mobile shopping and all that, the voice of the customer is clearer to the audience, and that makes it way more right, I would say, because the customer becomes way more right than before, although the customer is always right anyway.
I see. What about yourself, Tiago? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what Mohammed said, and how also that there are some aspects of what retailers were trying to achieve already some 20 years ago, and technology wouldn't allow them to do it in an easy way. And at the moment, it's just it's ingrained in the how stores are just built. And I can give an example. It's related with trying to understand the buying patterns of the customers, for instance. It would be impossible, or 20 years ago, I was involved actually in a retail project that was kind of at the time just on the edge and trying to look at this. But let's say 20, 30 years ago, how would a retailer understand the buying patterns of a customer, meaning that you could eventually have the data of a purchase. And so this customer bought a shampoo, I don't know, so some vegetables, but they wouldn't know who that customer was, and would that customer be back the next week, and what would he buy then, and the quantities, and so on, and put all this in perspective. And the technology has allowed, for instance, what I was mentioning 20 years ago was I was involved in a program that very much was able to look at these using, in this case, the loyalty cards from the retailer. And that's actually why they were so much pushing for loyalty cards. And they would give incentives for people to use them because it would give the retailer a perspective on the customers that they didn't have before. They would be able to link, let's say, these different purchases with a particular customer. And from that, they would understand what they were really buying and how, and they would be able to make cross promotions. I mean, so a bunch of things just with this fact that they would be able to really see what the customer was buying. I mean, nowadays, so I mean, anyone going to an online shop already is, I mean, even before we get to actually visit the store, so they already know who we are, so with all the cookies and tracking and so on. But that's one aspect that I think was there already for a long time, but retailers never had the chance to really dig into this.
I never took that perspective on the loyalty cards, because I remember my parents having the loyalty card for the big supermarket back home. But yeah, it's an excellent way to gather data about your customers. I always thought it was to keep you in the loop of going to the same place, but maybe there's more to it, for so to speak. In your opinion, how was the retail landscape getting along before the pandemic?
I think in terms of how the retail was responding to the customer being always right, as we were talking, there were a lot of I would say relying on technology to do many of these kind of things, of tasks of understanding the customer behavior and the buying behavior, and seeing that from first when you are in a store and starting to actually buy a couple of items, and how long do you stand in looking at a shelf to compare products. And some actually some technologists started to try to understand how long people stand on these shelves, to the online buying, and the same scenario by how long you hover over a specific item on the website. And these participated a lot in understanding that some products, they sell more than the others, or we need to do this for that product to start selling, and enhancing the customer experience within the buying process and the decision process, which is actually, I think, way longer in understanding than the actual moment of buying. And you go back with all that to the ever-existing problem of the supply, and how you provide the supply to the shelf, or the supply to the store, or to the warehouse that is delivering, and how do you guarantee that the customer gets what he wants, or on time, or at the time they want. Technology has played a lot in that regard, but I think there is still a lot of existing problems that existed more with stores open rather than stores being closed in many countries, dealing with a lot of legacy point of sale systems and data that is scattered, and a lot of problems that they have been there for years, maybe with old and big retailers for 30 and 40 years, and they are still there till today. Some of them are trying to overcome these by migrating, or by filling in the gaps with some technology pieces that give them more visibility over what they are doing. But the problem is still there, for sure.
And I can see exactly what you mean. Like, imagine, I don't know, I'm going to say something silly now. In the 90s, like you said, the product was right. And I would imagine that the technology company trying to solve the supply chain problem would tell you, no, our idea is the correct way to do it. And then the client, so the supplier, would have to change their methods to fit the technology instead of the other way around, creating more problems probably in the end.
And it was much easier. It's just, okay, this item sells more. This is a better product. Everyone buys it. Everyone is talking about it. Just ship more of it, and that's it.
Yeah. Oh, that's quite a cool point of view. Anything you would like to add, Tiago?
No, I was just thinking. So back in the days, let's say a few years back, but also this is an industry where retailer is pushes around the suppliers. Let's say it has been like that for many years, and how also they would be able to just put the supplier against the wall basically, and saying, if you don't give me this specific margin or this specific price, I'm just gonna empty you from the shelves and give the space to your competition. It's I think that retail as was still very, let's say, not sure what the best term would be, but in terms of management, it was still a bit back in terms of lagging in terms of other industries, in how the whole supply chain and the relation with suppliers, etc., was dealt with, and even between retailers and customers. So a little bit of what Mohammed was saying, of our retailers were just kings. I mean, they would push suppliers the same way they would decide for customers what they would be buying. So they would just take the decision of what was ending up on the stores. But we certainly, I mean, have faced a significant change during the pandemic, obviously, just starting for the fact that people were forced to buy online and not going to the shops, some of them, although essential shops most of the times did remain open, but we saw how logistics were not ready. There weren't enough delivery slots, for instance, for everyone. So not everyone would be able to get a delivery. So they would still need to go to the supermarkets. But it has forced many people, at least, to visit the online stores. This here, I'm trying to look from the perspective also the business, as well as those that end up taking the decision of what to buy, so the consumers. And one aspect is also when the decision is made, and the many of significant amount of the buying decision is made actually on the store. Looking back, traditionally speaking, you would look at the shelf and you'd see, okay, you've got a butter A, butter B, price 40, 50. What's the best? You would make the choice there, and you would pick what would either be cheap or just to your taste, unless you were just very loyal to a specific brand. And so that's obviously what suppliers try to do. Fast consumer goods try to push us the brand for, to just so for people not to think about and just to go there, pick up, and that's it. But there's been here also, I think, one aspect to consider, which is how does the current situation with the pandemic and people moving to online stores, how does this change the consumer behavior? I personally like to also just go around the store and see, because maybe if I plan everything, I will have a list. But sometimes you don't, there's always something you either forget, but when just roaming around the store, you end up finding it. Oh, I need this, I need that. And also that is something that traditional retailers certainly try to incentivize, to promote, which is you live with more than what you thought you needed in the beginning when you started. So when you enter the store, you're thinking you're going to need 10 products, you end up living with 20. And that's also something that the retailer, the way they create the stores, they will try to push for that to happen. The same will be online, but there are differences in the sense of the customer is not just roaming around. There's a tendency, let's say, to go and search specifically what you want. So you have the search field, you put shampoo, and then so you go and get what you want, or you just search for a particular brand of shampoo, it goes straight there. So there are certainly differences that impact in the end also what are the choices of the customers, and is there that the buying decision in online stores ends up being more planned than on the store. It's so there are several aspects here that I think also will influence how different business models and companies end up being successful or not.
Funny enough, when you mentioned that in a traditional retailer, there is always the incentive to push the sale of more products apart from the ones that we initially intended. As you were saying that, I was going through my mind when purchasing something online. And usually nowadays, you always have, people who have bought this product also have bought this product in combination with this one, pushing more sales. It's so old strategy, but it's still being used in today's new, more advanced online stores, so to speak, right?
Yes, the question is, are those companies also rethinking that, or are they applying the same formula, let's say, that they were doing on the physical stores?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, these were the times where bundling was actually done by tape. So they would bundle two products together.
Exactly.
That's a good
exactly.
point.
So
picking up on that one, Mohammed, for you. So Tiago gave us a perspective on before and after the pandemic. What about yourself? What are your thoughts of how retail is after the start of the pandemic? How has it changed?
I think that change always starts with how the business works. And the disruption comes first in new ways of doing business. It's not about, many people are talking about digital transformation, and this is what is happening. And it's nothing but, instead of signing a paper, it's clicking on a screen. And that doesn't change the way you do business. With the pandemic, what happened is that retailers, and I'm not here talking about only supermarkets or fashion or even manufacturers who actually were trying to do retail directly. The way they do business, it had to be different. How would you show a person a car without having a store? How would you try shoes without being in a store? How would the number of returns be, even in an online shop like Amazon or even smaller ones? Imagine the number of returns, because you don't know, like many people would do that. I've known many people doing that, going to a store, trying things, and then they go and buy it online because it's cheaper. That was a very typical behavior.
Oh, yes.
And if you cannot do that, then you need to try, I don't know, each one of them. Oh no, this doesn't look good on me. Though this, not the right size, not the right color, and you start having a new huge problem of returns. And this forces retailers to do business in a different way. And how can I deal with more than one transporter of goods to get me how is the return policy actually is designed? So if you go to the shop, you need to get the item exactly as it is, and a lot of factors are in, right? You shop from Amazon today, and an item that you don't like, you try to return it. They tell you, no, sorry, keep it. It's cheaper to keep it.
Right.
So the entire business model is changing, and the equation of how can I make profit is actually changing. And you find today even grocery retailers today that they don't have shops. They are almost everywhere in Europe. In where I live in Berlin, there's always people talking about gorillas, where they deliver in 10 minutes, and another competitor from the States coming in, which is Flink, and it became a complete different industry. I don't have stores. I just deliver, and I deliver in short time. And you find small local ones. I'm delivering in 30 minutes, but I have a wider range of goods. So even supermarkets, even fashion, even all of these, that people were targeting usually the entire set of customers or every audience possible. People are thinking nowadays from a retail perspective about where is the niche that I want to sell to and succeed in that. Because not everyone will be living inside the city. Not everyone will accept a delivery charge. Not everyone will accept this, and that. Not everyone will accept maybe a higher margin on some goods because I cannot sell things at the same price. So people started, I think, retailers started thinking about niches that they can actually sell to, and a different way of delivering and a different way of selling. How can I actually do the payment? Even payment became different. I've never seen payment associated directly to pull from bank accounts except this year. Never seen it.
Okay.
And now it's almost everywhere. You pull directly from a bank account, you associate your bank account to, I think it's one of the habits that helps buying more, because you don't really see a limited card. You're just pulling from the account and it pulls a little bit later in the day. So it's not an instant transaction. And suddenly you find out that you bought things worth 500 pounds or euros and you planned 50. So that it's a game now of how can I put the behavior of the customer in my in a way that actually I can sell more to a specific niche and make the highest margin out of it. And that's a very different way of thinking about, I'm going to open a grocery shop, put every common item there and hope customers will come and buy.
True. You just mentioned something that got me thinking, which was the direct transaction between your bank account and the buying. I never thought about that, because usually you have, I don't know, something like WorldPay, PayPal in the middle, serving as a middleman.
There are still middlemen,
to your purchase,
but now they're
right?
connecting directly to the bank accounts. And if you are buying a little bit of an expensive item, they will offer you, do you want to pay this in installments? Because we can get you credit.
Oh, credit,
exactly.
Making more money for them.
And that's not the retailer, that's the middleman, the merchant in the middle.
Well,
so it's, everything is becoming, the game is becoming different. Yeah.
What the retailer wins with that is that people will buy more
Exactly.
because they have that facility to
true,
pay.
True. And the other one, well, they'll make money because they're selling you a credit, and that's how they'll make the transaction, or even charge you a fee, a minimal fee that you won't even notice for the buy. Welcome to the new money maker. Moving on to another one. So, okay, about which market sizes and growth potential are we actually talking about?
I think it's everything
in the trillions. For
exactly.
Sure.
And we're talking about the biggest retailers to the smallest ones. I've seen and even big retailers that they are going to different businesses, diversifying the business. This is one of the things that is becoming more and more often now. Do you know that Amazon has renting cars?
I did not. Wow, that's it.
So they started renting cars in some countries. They are trying it out. And so diversifying what they do is something that is becoming essential. And the smaller ones are trying to get bigger. And unfortunately, this is sometimes it kills the local businesses unless they compete. But you see a lot of small shops being bought by bigger ones, or a bigger series buying another, or even there are a lot of very small products nowadays coming from everywhere in the world. This is an online commerce for you, and they sell it very cheap to small groceries, and people just order, and some people deliver with bicycles or whatever, like within the grocery. But of course, it has, like, is it up to date? Do you see the products that are actually there on shelf? Like, there are a lot of problems within there, but they're trying to compete by anyway, because the technology gap and the spend gap on understanding the buyer and putting the technology in is huge. And if they don't do that, they will go bankrupt.
It's a question of survival nowadays, right? Adapt.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just on that, just giving here an example of what I see locally where I'm at. So Brentwood, just outside of London. What I see at the moment happening is that so post-pandemic world, let's say, but local shops just got together, and they have now a service that basically is so buy local. And so within here the area, so these shops have got together, and they have a delivery, so someone can go to the website and basically buy from those shops. So they're not part of any bigger groups, so they didn't had any delivery before the pandemic. They're trying to adapt and just reach the consumers the same way that they see the competition doing. Will that work or not? I mean, so there would be several questions to that. It's a mix in a way of also very different stores, what they sell. Could that be something that then together will just give more choice to the consumers and they will use them, or will they try to use this just because they know the stores, they know the people, they want to support the local shops? Is that what motivates them? Several questions for sure, but all the landscape of retail is changing at this moment. And another aspect is so we've been addressing in terms of all these different models that we see now popping up. Gorillas is one example. So in Germany, the same is happening here in the UK, in London. Most of them just really started to do some significant volumes in the last year. With the promise, so similar to Gorillas, either delivery in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. There will be differences between these companies. Do they function in a kind of gig economy model, or do they employ their riders? Do they own the centers, the fulfillment centers, or not? So there are variations, let's say, of this model, even within these new names in this space. But there's certainly not all of them are going to survive, that's for sure. So and even the question is, does these business models also make sense once they scale, and will they get to that point? Gorillas is one example that I think that it's cheap, let's say, in the sense of they give choice, they give speed in terms of delivery, and they do it for a price that is ridiculous, let's say. I mean, if you would go yourself to a supermarket, even if it's just down the road, you have to spend 15, 30 minutes, maybe more. That's probably worth more than €2 for you. And you're gonna be paying less than that just for the deliveries, 180, I think right now, for delivery of Gorillas. So I think that these new players are in a way also pushing for a change in behavior of how people also are used to buy, and so in the end we will see these changes happening, and one model might work better than others, and that's what will end up just giving us the winner in the end, let's say. But there's just taking the example of Gorillas, this works well serving bigger cities, and that's where they're starting. But what about areas, rural areas, or so just smaller villages and things like that? It's I also know of an example in this case trying to tackle this area of the market underserved, really, which in this case in Sweden, but where so Sweden is significantly big in terms of area, but with not much population, and there are small villages that have the nearest supermarket 100 kilometers away or something like that. So they're not served. They don't have options. We see in Sweden a retailer. Its name is Livs. So I certainly don't know Swedish, so might have pronounced that wrongly. But they basically have these sort of stores that they built in blocks, let's say, like a Lego. They just so cheap to put them together, and they are cashierless. So there's no people operating the stores. The only thing they do is that they put the store there, they do the delivery to these stores, and so they do replenishment, etc. And that's it. There's nobody else working on those stores. But the fact is that they're serving people that are currently don't have an option, don't have any choice unless driving, so taking 1-2 hours at least to just get somewhere where they can buy products. So I mean, there's always some parts of the market that will need to be served differently. And so I think that all of this is happening at this moment, and the big cities are certainly easier, let's say, in terms of the fact that you have millions of people in a small area. But all the market is currently being challenged and disrupted with all these different models.
Kind of like a bit of battle royale for what's the best focus and the best model to achieve at the end, right? I know we've touched this subject in the past questions, but I would like to really focus on this now. How is technology being used within this transformation? Which role will it play within retail in the future?
So technology has been used in different ways, I think, in the past and even in the present. So in the past, and that's something that was common in retail and other different sectors, processes were mainly managed by the software you put in there. So you have huge products from older ones from IBM and Oracle, and all these big names. And don't get me wrong, they were great products, like for warehousing and for managing the supply chain and everything. But they almost force the retailers to do the work in a specific way. That started to change, and newer software is flexible enough to customize here and there. And there was different kind of commerce and other platforms that came into play, and that technology was always the core of what you have, and then you try to do everything else by either something that you do manually or either something that you try to customize in that piece of technology. And that was limiting retailers and even manufacturers who wanted to do retail directly, cutting the middleman. That limited them a lot. In the last few years, I've been seeing technology being used in a completely different way. So starting from being the complementer. So these technologies are in place. You cannot escape having proper systems of records in place to manage your goods. You cannot have, you cannot avoid that. And you put something on top of that to start understanding the data that you have. You have massive amount of data coming from everywhere. And you start putting layers on top to start understanding this data and starting helping decision makers decide based on this data. I've seen supermarkets, for example, saving tens of millions of dollars with a very simple app that was delivered in 2 or 3 months, just understanding and predicting where are the shelves that can be empty in the next few minutes, and at what time of the day people buy this more, and what if we do a promotion here and there quickly on certain items on certain shelves. And just that in the hand of a store manager, it saved millions for these supermarkets to actually manage that flow between the warehouses and the shelves. In addition to the money they make from promotions, etc. But it's it was one of the great examples I've seen there. And this doesn't become only a complementary of business. It becomes in the essential part of doing business. We've seen now a lot of either retailers or manufacturers, they are carving out some of the core functionalities of the commerce or retail, and they are doing it outside that. They need the AI part. They need the flexibility of the apps. They need the speed of the apps. They need the mobility. They need something in the hand of someone working in a warehouse or working in a store. They are forced to use less people because of social distancing, and you cannot have many people within the same place. So how can you manage the same demand, or actually higher demand, because people are buying more online, by less people? And what kind of tools? The tools that they used 2 years ago are not serving them today. So having technology today started being playing a more like technology. So technology today started being or starting playing a very essential role in how retail is doing business. And I think that's the spend on IT and the spend on software from retail point of view has been shooting exponentially in the last few years. And I think these last 2 years, they will change the way retailers did business forever.
It's I've been just looking more at the perspective, let's say, of the business model and the behavior, consumers, and etc. And this is also something that I see in regards to this aspect, which is one is there has been some technologies that were already mature or so available, but they were dependent on people's behavior and how fast they would be used, adopted, and so on. One trend certainly with the pandemic that happened was how we saw people that had never used the systems in terms of payment and reading barcodes on supermarkets, etc. So to avoid social contact then on the tills and so on. So we saw people adopting more and more these technologies that were already available in the stores, in the supermarkets, for instance. So they started to use more and more these barcode readers, where basically you just go in, you put things in your trolley, and at the end you already have the list of the items that you need to buy. You can just go, as long as there's some technology that can handle the payment. You can just go in and go out, and no social contact, so no proximity with other people. All these technologies have been, some of them, around for some time already. And here in the UK, at least, I've seen these for years now. But you go to any supermarket here in the UK at the moment, and you see how all of a sudden, when you had 20 or 50 barcode readers, now you have a huge aisle with 200 barcode readers, because people started using it. And at the moment, I see them not stopping, and so they got used to it. And so there's been also aspects of people's behavior that has changed, in that just got them, let's say, to experiment and use technology, and they have. I see them stick to it, and that's also just going to end up having the retailers using this more. And what happens is that technologies at the moment, and retail is employs millions of people throughout the world. It's very labor intensive, let's say, but that is changing. And one aspect of all this transformation is certainly we will see the number of employees that retailers have reducing one way or the other. Certainly, there's going to be other functions or other needs out there in the market. We just adapt, I'm certain. But the same on the logistics chain with what we see, taking the example of Amazon, so everyone knows, but they're big warehouses full of robots, and more and more, and less people on the warehouses. Although Amazon still right now employs and is looking for thousands of people because they're growing quite fast. But the fact is that they're also on the front of adoption of technology. If the technology exists but people don't use it, it's same as nothing.
So adoption is key here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that is all the time we have for today's episode. Thank you very much, Tiago and Mohammed, for taking time off your busy schedule and joining us on our podcast. We'll also like to send a big thank you to everyone who is listening, and hope you can join us on our next episode of High Tech Low Code Podcast. As always, we'll feature more guests and approach more topics of importance to the tech world. See you soon.
Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.